Okay, so we got another game. We're rated 1294 against Cometa Jr. 1327. 24, we do the bishop's opening. He plays d6 like the Philidor style, blocks in the bishop, a little passive. We continue with our setup. We go knight c3, controlling the center. He develops his queen knight, also controlling the center. We continue. We close our pawn chain now that the bishop is outside. And we open up our dark square bishop's diagonal. He develops his queen early in the game. This doesn't threaten anything. The drawback is he's blocking his own bishop and he's moving his queen early. So now it's our turn. Maybe he's preparing some type of queen trade for some reason, and he's in this roundabout way. I don't know. Now I want to play a 4. Now let's say he does go for that weird queen trade line, and I take his queen, and he takes with his bishop. I mean, that's all possible and fine, but I'd rather try to punish him for this. And so I'm going to change up my move order, and instead of going f4 immediately, I'm going to jump my knight in, saying if you move your queen, I'm always going to have this tactic at the end of the line. And if you try to do this, I can, at the very least, mess up your structure. So, change it up a little bit from what we would have done if you played normal. So, he plays f6. What does this threaten? Nothing. It just controls some dark squares. The drawback is it greatly weakens the light squares around the king, so it's a very bad idea. It also takes away the natural square from the knight, so it's a bad idea. It also did not prepare castling, so it's a bad idea. Also, this pawn is fully protected by another pawn, does not need extra protection, so it's a bad idea. Okay, now that that's out of the way, his light squares are quite weak. I'm always keeping this in mind. Queen h5. At the moment, he can just go g6, and I don't have a follow-up. So now that he did this, it's very passive. He's not developing his pieces. It's a pretty bad move. Now I'm going to go f4. Normally the bishop would be developed on this diagonal, and that would be, what black has against white, the pressure of this diagonal. But now I don't even have to worry about that pressure because his bishop's at home. So black just takes. This doesn't threaten anything, it just wins a pawn. The drawback is it releases control over central squares. It also helps me develop with tempo. Keep in mind, if I take this pawn, this doesn't win anything. I just take the queen. Also, the bishop's defended. Also, this is in a check. Okay, so we can take the pawn back. That seems reasonable enough. And now we have 3 minor pieces out. Black has 1. And he's nowhere near finishing developing. He doesn't have good squares for his pieces, whereas we do, and we're going to castle, probably long. We're going to get in queen h5 at some point. We're going to provoke g6, and then we're going to give him the royal fork. In order for this to work, we need his knight to move. So let's say he's making this natural move, then maybe we could try this check. Although then he has the resource knight g6, so it doesn't quite work, but you can see the things I'm thinking about. Black goes b6. What does this threaten? Nothing. Probably just to get the bishop out to develop. The drawback, it weakens these light squares now. It's also slow, and his pieces are still on the back rank. could do a natural move like this. We could maybe even bring the queen out. Those are both options. I think you could play a little like anything you want. It depends on your style, I guess. But I'm just going to keep developing. Developing is my style. Control the center. Develop a piece. Don't let him know if I'm in a short castle or long castle. Yeah, you can't go queen h5 here, but that's perfectly fine. So he fianchettos his bishop. What does this threaten? Nothing. What's the drawback? Nothing really. He might even castle there now. That might be advisable for him. And just in case he does castle that way, I'm gonna send a care package his way with a4. So I'm curious to see which way he's gonna castle. In light of that, I'm gonna delay my own castling for a second, and I'm just gonna lift my queen up so he doesn't know which way I'm castling. I don't even know which way I'm castling. Okay, so he launches g5. What does this threaten? Obviously to win the bishop. Drawback. Well, now he definitely can't castle here. So I'm going to assume he's castling queenside. This lets me get my bearings on that. Also, this pawn moving weakens these squares. So now this is even more tender. I could take this maybe. If he takes, I can recapture two ways. Maybe the knight's more natural. Maybe he castles long there. I probably have stuff there, but I don't see a reason to do that with 4 minutes on my clock. I'll just retreat the bishop and say these pawns are way overextended. I'm going to go on this diagonal, assuming he castles this way, and I send my care package his way. I think my bishop might be nice here. So that's the plan. Also helps control the center in case he kicks my knight. I would like to jump into the center. You could, I guess, go here and here. So he does castle long. This does look natural for him. He avoids any royal forks, even though that pawn's still tender and hanging. But like I said, I'm just gonna pawn storm him now. That's my plan. So A pawn or B pawn? Let's go A pawn. We're gonna push both of them as far as we can push them. And where's my king? Nobody knows. And he's still hasn't developed these, and where can he really develop them that even matter, right? Like putting the bishop here doesn't actually do anything. So he moves his queen. What does this threaten? Maybe he's trying to get on this diagonal, but I'm not going to castle there. Otherwise, maybe he's trying to get on this, but okay. Drawback is he's releasing control of some of these light squares in the center, and might be wasting time. Not entirely sure what he's doing. I'm going to sack my rook because he's so underdeveloped and his queen's offside, and I have all of these pieces pointing this way. So he takes the pawn that I just sacrificed. I'm going to take his knight with my rook. Now this probably looks insane. Might actually be insane, but it's interesting because yes, he gets my rook, but look at his king side structure now. Is it worth a rook? You tell me. I could take this pawn, I can take this pawn, but I can bring in the queen in front of the king. Look at his queen, look at his knight, look at his bishop. So his idea Instead of developing as fast as possible to make sure he doesn't get checkmated, he goes a6, wasting a turn, and the pawn is still hanging, so what? Now, this would be checkmate if the queen wasn't here. So, that's something to keep in mind if the queen ever got deflected. But we're going to keep things simple and just break open the king by force. And now we have a knight and a pawn for the rook, and his king is running. You could make an argument that it was worth it, right? But we don't want his king to get too far. That's no fun. So maybe we can try to like keep this diagonal so he has to go here. That looks interesting. Let's do this to cut off the escape square e8. That way we can set up a mating net. Otherwise he has to go back, and if he goes back, he's not going to be free from my attack. So he decides to go forward, but now he has this escape square. That's annoying. So if we give this check, well, going up looks like suicide, because I'll maybe get a rook here. And going back, I still get to throw the knight in here and hit the queen. I don't know, that looks crazy. That looks good, I mean. Also, there would be this pawn hanging. Let's just give the check. Put our knight in the center. It gives us options. It can't be a bad move. The only bad thing is my clock. I have 1 minute to beat this guy. I'm talking a lot. I really should be playing longer games, but whatever. I'm just going to castle on move 19 because it gets the rook in the game on a square where if he moves his knight like I thought he just might, I get to take this pawn, bring that rook in with tempo. He can take with the queen, or he can go hide in the corner, you know, like a little hobbit. And I have some stuff going on. All my pieces are putting in work. All of his pieces. Okay, so he hides. I'm going to hit the queen and the rook and get my knight closer. And there's other threats. I'm trying to keep everything in mind, but there's only 50 seconds, so it's hard for me to piece everything together. But now this is a pretty clean fork. A move like knight into f5 instead would have hit the queen, but after he takes, it would have complicated the game and made it a little harder to win. So he takes the rook. I take the queen with check and still get this rook. I would talk more, but I'm low on time, so I'm trying to move fast. Now I just want to bring the queen in. Actually, this is a check, so might as well. This is a bad diagonal. And I do want to get the queen in. Let's just take the rook, because it's a rook. That'll lessen his counterplay. Now I can get the queen with check, which I did have last move at as well. And this 1300 collapses. So he goes back. He sets up for the next game. It's, you know, etiquette, good chess etiquette. I'm just going to keep bringing in pieces with check. Okay, I'm not paying attention now. Now I'll pay attention. Oh, that's checkmate. Okay. So we take him down. Boom. We're going to go again. Maybe I'll try to move a little faster. We finally reached 1300, so that's good. We're facing 1283 provisional. So we don't know what this guy actually is. OGGG. So we're again going to play the bishop's opening. This guy doesn't do anything crazy like the last guy. He just develops his knight towards the center. Normal stuff. Okay, when they do this, we always want to play f4. That's our point, and then we want to develop the knight behind the pawn. Maybe he'll give this bishop attack on the queen. We can just develop our knight and block it. If he doesn't, we can always consider shutting his bishop out with f5. Okay, so he does attack the queen. So we just block it with our knight. Natural move. We're ready to castle. Black jumps his knight into the center. This puts pressure on our c2 pawn. It also double attacks our knight. He's coming for us. That's the threat. The drawback, it moves the same piece twice, and the knight is not actually hanging. So there's that. We could just castle. That's interesting. How does that thing go? If you take this and he takes this, now I'm going to waste a bunch of time calculating this for no reason, but yeah, this doesn't work. I'm thinking of something else. Anyway, let's just castle. Now he'll probably take it and double our pawns. I assume that's what his idea is behind this. And I will allow it. I'm going to move my king to h1. What the heck? So he does not double my pawns and give me an open g file. Instead, he moves his knight back. What does this threaten? Maybe he wants to play f5. What's the drawback? He's moving the same piece again. And that knight was extremely important because it was not only defending the center, but it was defending this bishop. And this bishop was important to be defended because we were just going over the sacrifice, bring his king out, we jump our knight out, his king goes somewhere, and now he can take the bishop, whereas before it was defended by the knight. At the end of that line, he will be able to take this pawn and hit the king, but his king will have moved. Our queen will be here, and I might even give up this rook for the attack, so let's do that. And I'm going to sack this pawn and this rook probably to try to checkmate him. Down the f-file maybe. I realized there was no music just now. Okay, so what just happened? Sorry about that. I took his pawn and he took the bishop. We lured him out. There's actually, does this do anything? Because the rook is here. Let me see. If I take this way, he's going to obviously take, and then I take with check. That's a little too fancy. Let's go this way and not hang the knight. We could still open up the f-file at the end of the line, maybe. So he brings his king back to the starting square. Fine. But now I get to take this with my queen and bring my queen to the light squares. And then I get to open up the f-file next. Let's see if he's enticed. Let's see if he's a greedy little guy. Okay, he's not greedy. Instead, he says, okay, I'm in danger. I'm going to go h6. What does this threaten? The knight. What's the drawback? He already has severely weakened light squares because there's no f-pawn. And now by moving this to dark, he's weakening it further. He has no pawns that can guard light here. So that opens up the light square diagonal, and he has no pieces that can guard the light squares. So after this forcing move check, this pawn doesn't change anything. I'll just take it. His king will have to move, and that will be a checkmate. So we're going to do that because checkmate is pretty nice. Let's see what he does. Maybe he'll resign. He does not resign. And so this queen move, you can see, ends the game. So we get another game. Pretty easy win, although he was provisional, so we're not sure what he was. I got a couple viewer games coming in a few videos, 5 or 6. Stay tuned for those. Otherwise, some mature rapid games. Goodbye.